Okay, Timmy and Rusty Chapter 5. So Ben and Timmy stayed up for quite a while at Ben's house, working on their plan. They studied the map and looked over all the various possible routes the robbers may have taken out of town from the bank robbery. They used yellow highlighter to trace the possible routes, noting the distances from the Allens farmhouse and the possible routes into town that might be the easiest, and then try to determine what might other possible drop sites be for the stolen money that they could easily go back to. They considered all the park areas, hiking trails that may have been old, empty buildings in which they could have hid the money. They even thought they could have put the money in waterproof containers and buried it somehow. They noted that there were a number of places like that. 1. The old quarry out on Route 123. 2. Maple Park had a number of hiking trails and some old stone mill-type buildings along the Fox River. 3. Was an old abandoned coal mine out on Route 119 north of town that was closed down over 50 years ago, but many still like to walk the land out that way. 4 was the old Thompson High School that was abandoned 10 years ago when they built the new Johnson High School just on the other side of Phillips Park. Number 5 was the closed-down Gates Elementary School that was closed down when Beaupre Elementary was built 5 years ago, as it had more land that was included in a football, baseball, soccer field. And 6 was the old Wilcox manufacturing plant that used to make custom sheet metal parts for the Ford Motor Company before they moved out of town. There would be plenty of places to search if they just wanted to find them on the list, and that would take some time. It was getting close to 8:30, and Timmy knew his parents would be expecting them home soon, even though they knew he was at Ben's. Ben walked Timmy out to his bike, and they both felt like they had accomplished quite a bit for one day's work. As they walked to the sidewalk, they took a look down to the right, down to the end of the street. They knew there was an old abandoned house way down there that had 2 vacant lots on each side of the house that used to be owned by old Martin Applegate, one of the wealthiest men in town. He and his wife had passed away. He had owned Wilcox Manufacturing and made a small fortune before he had to close it. He had no other family to give it to or run it, so he just closed the business down, and he and his wife Martha just lived out the rest of their lives in that huge house. After they had passed it had gone up for sale forever, it seems, but now it had a sold sign on the real estate marker. The boys also wondered who might be the next owners, but they had not seen the sold sign before. Now what they saw was a huge vinyl tent draped all over the roof of the house and bright lights around the back of the house. The light had leaked around the sides of the house. Now they were curious for sure. The boys left Timmy's bike in the yard and with great stealth slowly walked down the street and used Timmy binoculars to see what was going on. They hid behind the 3-foot-tall evergreen bushes by the Merkel's house and tried to see what was going on in the backyard. What they saw were some people decked out in big white suits that covered them head to toe. They had on large helmets with glass fronts though they could see out. They had these large hoses that they pulled from some type of saucer-type container, something they had never seen before. There was no talking they could hear, but a lot of pointing by the person in a light blue outfit that was like the Whitewoods. That person must have been the boss, they thought. What they could hear was the faint sound of a motor or a compressor running in the background, and that they agreed was possible what was running through the hoses. As they continued to watch, there were 2 people at each of what they thought were medical stretchers carrying in and out what looked like to be people in vinyl body bags, like at a crime scene you would see on police shows. Ben said, "Do you think those are dead people?" he asked Timmy. Timmy replied, "I don't know, but I've never seen anything like this before around here," he added with some fear in his voice. "This is really strange," added Ben. The boys watched all this activity going in the house for 30 minutes, with people constantly going in and out of the old house. This was really strange, they both thought, and so close to their own houses too. They decided to go home and check this out again tomorrow night so as not to be seen by the people doing something at the old Applegate house. Now they had 2 investigations to work on. This one was really strange. Chapter 6. Timmy and Ben knew something was not right going on at the Applegate house. They just didn't know what was wrong about it. No one had been down at that house in quite a while, but a cleaning crew every 2 weeks to keep the place up. Bob's lawn care was there every 10 days and kept the yard in pristine condition. That house was always beautiful and the talk of the town. Since the Applegates had passed away, the city had even kept the Christmas decorations up and running, and it was so beautiful to have lights draped about the roofline and the gable peaks. One year they even had a Santa sleigh with reindeer on the roof. All the kids loved that. Timmy had the walkie-talkie and turned it on and called into the police comm center and asked to speak to Chief Bond and was patched through right away. "Chief Bond," said the voice at the other end. "Chief, this is Timmy, and we have to ask you something," Timmy stated. "Go ahead," said the chief. "What's the trouble?" he asked. Over. "Ben and I were working on our plan at his house last night, and as I was about to leave, we saw a lot of lights down at the Applegate place, and something did not seem right about it," Timmy stated. "We went down for a closer look, and the entire house is tinted with big tarps all over the entire roofline, going all the way to the ground. There are a number of people in white suits. They look like spacesuits or astronauts, going in and out of the building, and they are carrying things out on stretchers that look awful like body bags or something," he concluded. "Well, that is odd," said the chief. "Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to come down there and park up by your place later this evening." "What is your house number?" he asked. "I live at 209 and Ben is at 214, just up from the Applegate place." "We are going to go back to Ben's house and wait for you there," stated Timmy. "There's nothing going on there during the day, it seems." "I'll be on my way," began the chief later today. "I'm going to call ahead to the building inspections and see if he knows anything about what could be going on down there. I'll see you later today." With no lights or sirens, he had, and the chief hangs up. Timmy and Ben head back down to Ben's house and sit on the front porch, which is set back, and you really can't see into the backyard of the Applegate house. But you can see that there's nobody there during the daytime, so it is clear that these men want to operate late at night when nobody might be suspicious. The boys are still wondering what could be going on down there. The chief arrives right after supper time and at dusk, and he had parked around the corner from their street and walks down quietly and sees Timmy and Ben sitting on the porch. Ben had gone in and told his parents about what they saw, and Ben's dad had come out on the porch as well. Chief Bond introduced himself. They talk softly, and the chief fills in everybody in there that nothing should be going on at that house. There are no work orders for any reason at the house, and for any reason for it to be tented like like this. The chief goes on to say that usually a tenant house is when the structure has a live termite infestation, and they have to use chemical fogging gases to kill the termites that might be in the entire structures, as they are usually flying everywhere. He states there is no such work order on the city on file. The chief also fills him in that the city now owns the property, and that's why there's a for sale sign on the house. Ben's dad tells the chief that there is an alley behind their houses that does run up just past the Applegate house, and that anyone can use to get into their garages from the rear, as some of the garages were built facing the alley as they had no driveways on the side of their homes. They all decided the plan was to sneak up on the alley when it got darker and get as closest look as they can and see what those vehicles are doing. The chief had also called in for 3 backup police cars with 6 officers and told them where to park and to be quiet, no sirens or lights, and to come walking up the alleyway and meet them just a short distance from the Applegate's house at Ben's garage. Since there was some moonlight, they could all see to walk up the alley to the house. The chief led the way, with Ben and Timmy behind and the dad holding up the rear. The 6 backup policemen were quickly there as well. Once they were all there, they could see 2 panel trucks that had Bogart Exterminating written on the sides. They counted 6 people in white spacesuits, and one in the blue one Timmy and Ben had seen. The black body bags could be seen inside the vans, and they counted 4 or 5 of them so far. There was no signs of any chemical or smoke-type vapor being pumped into the house, as there were no large hoses being used from the vans to the house. But they could see and hear a small generator powering the lights on the back of the house, and some that were taken inside the house to light it up where the men were working. The building inspector had called the mayor to alert him as to what was going on through the comm center, and he had called Chief Bond. The Bond had walked back down the alleyway to speak so not as to be heard by the workers at the Applegate house. The mayor filled in the chief that there was an old story that Mr. Applegate had been an untrusting soul of the bank after the robbery 10 years ago, and had kept a lot of hidden cash at the house, but that no one had ever found it after an intensive search of the home. They eventually just gave up the thing, and there was nothing more as a wives' tale, and let it go as a pure rumor. Well, Bill, said the chief to the mayor, maybe somebody had some new info and decided to see if it was real or not. We're here and we're about to find out, he concluded. He said goodbye to the mayor and joined the surveillance team. He told the 6 policemen to follow his lead and instructed 3 of them to go quietly behind the vans and get on the other side so the men could not run off down the far end of the alley. The chief wanted to trap them. 3 of the officers did just that. They pulled their weapons out just to be ready. They went around and could see the chief and waited for his signal, a wave of his hand over his head. The chief begged the boys and Ben's dad to stay put in case there was trouble. They stayed back as the chief intended. The chief waved his hand over his head, and everyone moved in. They all yelled, "Hands up over your head and don't move." The men in the white suits did as they were told, and the man in the blue suit was just coming out of the house down the back porch steps. He saw what was happening and tried to run back inside, and 2 of the officers were in quick pursuit. Within 5 minutes he was coming back out with handcuffs on behind his back. The other men were told to sit on the ground as they were being handcuffed as well. "What are you men doing here at the Applegate house?" the chief demanded to know. No one said a word. The chief poked the man in the blue suit to answer, yet he said nothing. He motioned for the officers to open a couple of the body bags that were still on the ground. One had all kinds of expensive silverware, serving dishes, silver candle holders, everything you might think a rich person would have in their dining room. The second bag was the payday. It was full of banded paper money, what had to be tens of thousands of dollars in cash. Other officers went around the vans and looked in those bags as well, and more banded paper money was found. There had to be hundreds of thousands of dollars in all of those bags. Everyone then thought that the money was thought to be kept in the house, but was never found, was actually in the house after all. The chief went back over to the man in the blue spacesuit and asked him again, "Who are you, and what are you guys doing in the Applegate house?" Only this time with a much sterner voice. "I would suspect that it might be in your best interest to start talking," added Chief Bond, kicking the man lightly in the thigh. "We are not playing games here anymore," he added harshly. All right, said the man in the blue spacesuit. "I am John Applegate, the grandson of the owner, and he had promised me this house when he died, but he got mad at me after dropping out of college, disowned me, and told me that he was giving me nothing after his death. He said I was an embarrassment to the family, and he disowned me and my brother," he stated. "Even my own parents would not talk to me. I just didn't want to go to school anymore, but I didn't think it would come to my own family pushing me out. That was unfair," he explained. He went on, "I had heard the same rumor about the house being full of money, but really didn't believe it until no one could find it and gave up. It was after my parents' last blow-up, before I left, that I went up to the attic to get the last of my things, and I found the blueprints to the house rolled up and took them. In the plans, it showed a stone room behind my grandfather's workshop. It was down in the basement, but it had a steel door behind a built-in bookcase that actually had wheels on the bottom so the bookcase could be moved. I decided that we would come back tonight to look, and I saw the circular marks on the floor where the bookshelf had been moved in the past. I moved it out, and I saw the metal door. The combination to the door was written at the bottom right corner of the first page of the drawings, just backwards. It took me a couple of times to figure it out. I figured it out as the name Applegate was written just below it, but it was backwards too, and that was a clue, I guess, if grandfather had actually forgotten it when he got older." The grandson finished the story and just sat there quietly with his head slumped down. What else could he say? "Listen," said the chief, "was there no one else in the family left you could talk to?" he asked. "I don't know where anyone else is," the grandson replied in a dejected voice. "I really don't know if anyone else is alive or dead, but I did hear from one of my college friends that they had heard my parents were killed in a car accident in Paris a number of years ago. There is no one left here in the States," he concluded. "I have no idea where my brother is. It's just me." Ben, his dad, and I had moved up after all the action was over and heard the whole sad story. I could not help but think that it would be so sad to be disowned by your own family, just over school. Ben's dad said that even he could not be that mean to his children over something like that. He told Timmy and Ben that school was important, but family is more important, and that we should always remember that. Keep your family and friends close, no matter what. They cannot be replaced easily. Everyone was feeling sorry for John Applegate. "Well," said the chief, "that is some sad story. and I am sorry for all of that. But you are trespassing on city property, and I'm going to have to take you and your friends in, book you, and we're going to sort all of this out tomorrow. I'm sorry I have to do this, but it is the law, as the house is legally city property now. I hope you understand, ended the chief. I do, sir, said John Applegate. There is no more money left in the house, as the secret room is empty now. The silver was just there, so we decided to take it as well. With that, a prisoner van was called up to take the robbers downtown for booking, and they could all be sorted out in the next couple of days. All the bags of money were counted and put at the property room at the police department, along with the silverware. The money had totaled $750,000, a very tidy sum to be kept unsecure in an old house with people coming in and out all the time. Ben, his dad, and Timmy went back to the house in total disbelief as to what had transpired. What a night it had been. Timmy grabbed his bike from the yard and headed off home. Boy, did he have a story to tell his parents. His parents had seen the police van pulling up to the Applegate house with all the lights on going, and had been standing on the front porch when they saw Timmy coming across the street with his bike. "Timmy, did you see all this going on?" asked his mom. "Boy, did I," said Timmy with great excitement. "Ben and I, with Ben's dad, were down there, and it is some story I have to tell you." Chapter 7. Right before everyone had left Applegate property, he had asked if both Ben and Timmy could get their parents and the boys to come down to the station on Monday morning at about 9 a.m. for a meeting in the chief's office. Ben, his father, had agreed, and Timmy said he's sure his parents would come as well. It was sure a crazy night, and all kinds of thoughts were racing through Timmy and Ben's minds about all that had happened and what could the Monday meeting be about. They would just have to wait and find out. But the rest of the weekend was upon them, and that would have to wait. Besides, the boys still had planning to do about how to find the hiding place for all the money stolen from the bank over 10 years ago. That was like finding a needle in the haystack for sure. Their town wasn't big by any measure, but to find that one box of money in 15 square miles was not going to be easy, and certainly not for two 10-year-olds. Ben and Timmy were up early on Saturday and invited over to Ben's for breakfast. And that was fine, as Timmy's parents had to go over to her mother's house and help them move out some old furniture, as they were having a garage sale to make way for some new furniture they had just bought. The grandparents' old furniture was in good condition, but they had had it for nearly 20 years, and they really wanted to do some redecorating a little, and someone could surely use some good furniture, used as it might be. That would be put to good use at a good price for sure. Breakfast at Ben's was the father's specialty of French toast with just a touch of vanilla extract, cinnamon, and some confectionery sugar. Of course, log cabin syrup was on top. It was a favorite of even Ben's parents, and they had a fun breakfast and talked endlessly about all that went on at the Applegate house. What a night they had thought, and talked about what was going to happen to John Applegate, his helpers, and the $750,000 that was found. Again, they talked about how sorry they were for the Applegate's grandson being disowned by his grandparents, and felt it was a very cruel thing to do, just for not wanting to finish college. Everyone thought it was pretty mean-spirited, especially for a very wealthy family. It would be interesting to see how this all played out with the city not wanting the house. Luckily, no one was hurt, and the boys wondered if John and his cohorts would be spending time in jail for what they were doing. Ben thought that it would be up to the district attorney to decide if he was going to press charges, and then the city council would have to decide what to do with all that money, especially since they never knew it was in the house in the first place. It was certainly a windfall for the city, and so was the Applegates giving the city such a beautiful home and property. The boys thanked Ben's dad for breakfast and went off to do some more planning as Ben's parents had cleaned up the kitchen. Up to Ben's room they went and got out the map to keep on deciding where the first place was to look for the hidden bank money. So many possibilities, and the Allen boys would be getting out of jail soon and would most certainly know where to dig up the loot right away. The boys knew they would have to work fast so they could find the money first. Going over the map again, the boys knew that the old quarry was very close to the Allen farm, but it was so large and had roads that started at the top and went in a spiral round and round, going all the way down to the bottom, as the soil and rocks had been removed for various building projects around the city and had been used to fill out uneven land for commercial building purposes. That had been going on for over 20 years, longer than the boys were alive, and the boys knew it would be easy to ride their bikes to the bottom, but very hard to pedal back all the way to the top. The old Wilcox factory was chosen for the first place to start their investigation. It was locked up, but there were always ways to get through the chain link fence and into the building. They just had to be careful and safe. The boys decided that they would take their football helmets with them to make sure that falling debris would not hurt them. They also had some leather gloves from the Cub Scouts that they could use as well to keep their hands from getting cut. They also decided to wear their shoulder pads so nothing could hurt them. They had their flashlights, some spare batteries, and they would carry their backpacks with them. They also decided that they would not take Rusty with them on this trip, as he might run off and get hurt inside the old building. Rusty could go with them to the quarry, but that would be the second place they would work as a crime scene. It was then that they decided that they would go after the meeting and think about what was going to happen on Monday with the chief. And he would let them, and the boys would let him know what they were up to on Monday. They wanted to keep the chief informed, as they knew that they might need his help, just like they did yesterday at the Applegates. Timmy, Ben, and Rusty would spend the rest of Saturday out at Phillips Park, as they took their bikes and swimsuits and could ride around and then run through the sprinklers in the afternoon to cool off. Even Rusty liked to run through the sprinklers. Timmy's mom had packed them a lunch of PB&J sandwiches, chips, and 4 grape sodas that the boys split and put in their backpacks. "Thanks, Mom," said Timmy. "Bye, Mrs. Jones," said Ben, as the boys rushed out the back door of Timmy's house. "You boys be safe," said Mrs. Jones loudly, not knowing if the boys really heard them or not. She went to the back door. "Now you boys don't forget that Mrs. Miller is being thanked for all of her hard work at church on Sunday, and you guys have that nice bouquet of flowers to give her." Church on Sunday was going to be nice, and a calm Sunday was everything everybody needed. And it was a good way to celebrate for Mrs. Miller's hard work and 40 years of service at the church.